Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Whenever I'm in a mellow mood, I want to listen to a musician like John Mayer. And one of the lines that he has in his song is, "Fear is a friend who's misunderstood." And I find that very interesting. It's very poetic. And it's a line that has stuck in my head because fear and, to some extent, chaos is a friend that's misunderstood. So chaos is in our lives every single day, and most of us never seem to plan for chaos. What we tend to do is we get into the day hoping that everything's going to work back to back perfectly well, and it doesn't. It never does. It's always this chaos that comes in because chaos wants to visit us. It wants to ring the doorbell and go, "Hey, I'm here." And you're going, "No, go away, go." It's not going to go away. So this episode is episode 139. Well, we're on episode 199 here, but this is a rerun of 139. It's about chaos. And here I am, not battling chaos, just running a previous episode so that we get some breathing space. Here we go, how to thrive in the midst of chaos and succeed. J'ai beaucoup de devoirs aujourd'hui. That's French for I have lots of homework today. And it's what my niece Marcia informs me almost daily when I pick her up from school. Three years ago, my wife Renuka and I started mentoring my niece Marcia. While schoolwork is never easy to cope with, there was always time to beef up on spellings, to learn about clouds, Earth's subduction zones, and the wondrous mysteries of the solar system. Then Marcia moved to year 7, what you'd call 7th grade, and we were suddenly swamped with homework, English, social studies, maths. Even that little bit of French came rushing at us from out of nowhere. It seems so maddening when every day you're thrown deep into yet another onslaught of homework. This is the kind of chaos that hits us as we go through our business lives. We have every intention to learn more, to do more, and yet we find ourselves in this spin cycle that we don't understand. At this point, it's important to pull back and to notice that nothing else had changed in our lives. The Psychotactics newsletter still went out on time. The 3-Month Vacation Podcast, it rolled out on schedule. Every post at the membership site at 5000 BC, the article writing course, it went just as planned. But in Marcia's world, such order didn't exist. The homework seemed to pull us away from what we believed to be important. Somehow, something had to change. Hi, I'm Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. In this podcast, we're going to look at how to achieve the seemingly impossible. To break free from gravity, we have to have a strategy that enables us to go ahead, even under trying conditions. The 3 things we're going to look at are seemingly pedestrian. They're almost every day, but it's something that we've had to use ourselves for our business and now for Marcia. And the first thing is non-negotiable items. The second, which you've heard before, is just say no. And the third is about drills. Let's start with the first one, which is non-negotiable items. About a month ago, I finished conducting the article writing course. On that course, you have 25 participants. They're all headed towards one goal, to be able to write articles that are far superior to what you'd see on the internet. And they have to write an article in under 2 hours. At the end of the course, I ask every one of the participants to relate their experiences as they went through the course. And that's when you hear the stories that you've never heard before. Stories of how one of them almost lost a child and still finished her homework. Or the story about how one person had been working until 2 a.m., then sat down to write the article at about 3 a.m. And that's just so that they could meet the deadline for the day. Every one of these stories starts off in an almost identical manner. In their world, article writing was all about struggle, about frustration and chaos. And then, 12 weeks later, every single one of the participants who made it to the end point can write an outstanding article. It's complete in almost every respect, and they can do so within that 2-hour period. Some of them were taking days, one even took 4 weeks to write an article, and yet at the end of the course, those very same people were achieving the seemingly impossible in under 2 hours. Not surprisingly, you do the same. In the early part of the 20th century, 1912 to be precise, tooth decay was a massive problem. People simply didn't brush their teeth. They do so now, twice a day. In the USA, the Boy Scout handbook from the mid-1950s, it had a section on personal hygiene. It stated that ideally a boy should bathe twice a week and shampoo his hair once a week. What we're doing today is achieving the seemingly impossible. We're engaged in time-wasting activities that were considered unimportant for almost all of human history. Our modern lives have made it easier to brush and shower, but you know the reason why we do what we do. We've made it non-negotiable. That toothbrushing, non-negotiable. That shower, non-negotiable. Marsha's reading, spelling, and solar system learning, it became negotiable. When the homework rushed in, it took control of the evening, and soon the important elements were swept away. And it's not a lot different from what happens in our own lives. We start off wanting to achieve precise goals, but suddenly a client dumps a truckload of work, and then we're off scampering. The reason why the graduates of the article writing course can write in under 2 hours is because they drew their line in the sand. They realized that their assignments were non-negotiable, and that meant that they got their reward in just 12 weeks. At Psychotactics, we too have to make a few of our activities non-negotiable. So Renuka and I go for a walk almost every morning. Now, we haven't gone in the last couple of weeks since we got back from Goa. It's always very hard getting back into a rhythm once you're away on holiday, but Renuka's not been too well either, so she's not been sleeping very well, and that's chaos. But today, a couple of weeks after we've got back, we're back on the road. Now, we lead super busy lives, and here's what we do before we go on vacation. We need to queue all our newsletters. We need to queue all the newsletters for the time we're away. Now, this applies to our membership site at 5000 BC, Psychotactics, and even the podcast. But not just for the time that we're away, but also at least for a few weeks when we get back. Because you don't know what happens when you get back, and you're just making this re-entry, and it's often difficult. So the vacation adds a dimension of chaos that's not normal. Yet we manage it quite well and do so every 3 months before we go on vacation. So we had to take a similar sort of learning and then apply it to Marsha. We had to make spellings, reading, and learning about subduction zones non-negotiable. Making something non-negotiable implies just one thing. You carve out a piece of time and you put out a force field. Every other activity goes around that time. The participants on the article writing course didn't have 2 or 3 extra hours each day, yet they made it non-negotiable, even through sickness, through late nights, and through disruptive clients. Life doesn't give us time on a platter. The people who believe that they will have time in the future are just living in la la land. Life doesn't care squat for your goals. You have to snatch a chunk of time from your very busy day and then put that force field around it. You're listening to this podcast not because it appeared from nowhere, but because I had to make it non-negotiable. I had to go to the cafe, I had to sit there for a couple of hours, I had to script it and then come back. It all takes many hours in the day. Now, it's not like I have 8 days in a week, and neither will you. You have to make some things non-negotiable. Like right now, it's 5 a.m. on Tuesday, and I know that I have to get this podcast recorded because it has to be edited, the music has to be put in, and if I wait, then it becomes negotiable, and that's impossible. You wouldn't be listening to it. So, one of the main things that you have to do is you have to make things non-negotiable. But the second thing that you have to do is you have to say no. And this is about focus. Focus is not about what you're doing, but what you're not doing. So how do we say no? And what do we need to reject? That's what we'll find out in this second section on Just Say No. Shawnee is always tired when we come over for playdates. That was a random but bone-chilling comment from my niece Kira. She would have been just 6 years old at the time, and every month or so we have playdates for Kira and Marsha. At one such playdate, Kira made the statement, "Shawnee is so tired every time we come over for playdates." Until that moment, it hadn't occurred to me that a 6-year-old would notice. After all, Kira and Marsha are always running around, they're always playing. Why would they need me to participate? I simply used that downtime to lie on the sofa and to get back my breath. But then comes the statement, and to this day it ricochets somewhere in my brain. It was at that point that I decided to say no. We all realize there's nothing new in the concept of saying no. We've heard it a million times before. We use it a lot when we've had enough, and we say no. However, that's not the lesson that we need to learn. What we really need to understand is that we have to have that no ready to be used at very short notice. This year, for instance, we announced an information products course. It was the start of the year, and we always list what we're going to cover in the year, and we send it out to 5000 BC members and I guess Psychotactics members as well. And so that way you know how to plan for the courses and workshops and whatever we're doing in the year. Well, at the start of the year, it looked fine, and then April set in. And the article writing course started putting a fair bit of pressure on me. And so we decided to pull the plug on the information products course. We said no. Historically, we've said no to very lucrative offers, some of them our own. You've already heard how we said no to affiliates, how we barely do any joint ventures. We've probably done about 3 or 4 in 16 years. How we have not gone down the path of speaking at dozens of events, traveling all the time, trying to make our book bestsellers. That's all no. And even when we look at Psychotactics history, you'll find that we've said no a lot of times. You're likely to have heard of the Protégé program. We started it as an annual program back in 2006, then in 2007, and then in 2008 we had it yet again. Each time we took on just 15 clients, but together they earned us close to $500,000. Would you have walked away from such a lucrative option? Most people wouldn't have, but we decided the program was too intense for the clients. They weren't implementing the learning as deeply as they should or they could, and so we said no. But as you're listening to this podcast, you realize it's not about Psychotactics. Renuka and I, we have a lot of decisions to make, and we say no at a fairly regular clip. Actually, Renuka is better at it than I am. However, this is not about the podcast or psychotactics. It's about Marsha's sudden burst of homework, which is the chaos that showed up suddenly. And like any of you, she was faced with this weird situation. It's not like she could pick and choose what she wanted to say no to. And so we had to make those decisions for her. And sometimes saying no means you have to deal with the teacher. Take, for example, the recent assignment about the solar system that she had to do. She had to find 50 facts about the solar system. Then she had to write them down on a sheet of paper. If she took just 2 minutes per fact, it would take almost 2 hours. We decided to say no. We would find the facts, we'd give it to her. She'd then write it down. We said no to the mundane manner in which the homework was doled out. And the time it saved, we could use to learn something more valuable. The reason why we have chaos in business is simply our inability to say no. When Kara made her "Shawnee is always tired" statement, I couldn't continue to let things stand as they were. I had to refuse to work on weekends. The volume and range of work I was taking on required so much energy that if I wasn't rested enough, it wasn't Kara alone who was disappointed. My clients could find that little inconsistency in my work. And worst of all, I had to look at this tired face in the mirror. And so much of this is about planning. When Renuka and I go for our walk, we do so because we want to keep fit, but we also want to listen to podcasts. So we exercise, we listen to podcasts, we listen to audiobooks. But on Fridays, we talk about things that go onto our stop doing list. Things that we both need to say no to, both in Marsha's world and our own. So we sit down, we make the list of the core things that we want to achieve. We made the weekends non-negotiable. We created chaos planning. So in the afternoons, 3 hours, I don't do anything, or I don't mark out as time that I can work in. It's just non-negotiable. We take 3 months off because we said no to endless work. It's all about renegotiating the things we have to do, but constantly battling what we need to drop. Which is why when Kara comes over on her playdates, I'm no longer sprawled on the sofa. I run the girls ragged. I'm not exhausted like I always was. And to get things done, we have to find a way to use Friday to our advantage. I think you should do the same thing. Make Friday your say no day. Work out the things that you've done and what you need to drop. If you can, find a friend, go for a walk. If not every day, at least on Friday. Just say no. Chaos understands. Chaos will be back on Monday, but at least you won the battle for the weekend. And this takes us to our third part, and we cover the concept of drills. When we think of talent, we think of something inborn. This assumption is pointless when you stop and think about how the brain works. The brain is a pattern-seeking device. If you think of talent as something inborn, then, well, you can't do anything about it. It means that you can never be talented in anything else but what you were born with. I, on the other hand, have this aversion to inborn talent. And it's one thing to just state something out loud. It's quite another to prove the point. So we started mentoring Marsha because she was struggling with her studies at school. She's a bright girl, and I've known her since she was 3, but it was clear that she needed help. While I love maths and languages and science, there are 2 fronts to work on: confidence and knowledge. So we set about going through drills. Day in and day out, we'd learn about clouds. We'd learn about cumulus, cirrocumulus, roll clouds, cumulonimbus, cap clouds, mammatus, and one of our favorites, clouds that look like spaceships, lenticularis, and clouds that look like waves on the ocean, Kelvin Helmholtz. Yep, that's a pretty weird name for a cloud. We rolled out drills for everything. First we started with clouds. Then we did countries and capitals. At the age of 9, Marcia knew 150 countries and 150 capitals, but not randomly. She worked her way from Iceland across to Europe and then to Russia and the Middle East and then Africa and Asia and so on. Every country in order from left to right, and she'd spit it out so quickly that if you followed her list with a sheet of paper, you'd find it almost impossible to keep up with her. So how does this apply to getting things done? Without drills, your brain doesn't have the chance to learn too much. Take the upcoming headline course, for instance. In a short period of 8 weeks, a client has to go from struggling with headlines to be astoundingly good. But what does astoundingly good mean? It means that the client can write dozens, even hundreds of headlines if needed. Every headline is genuinely curious. It's not clickbait. But at the same time, every client, without exception, should become an auditor. They should be able to look at any headline across any industry and should be able to fix that erroneous headline in a minute or two. This level of ability calls for drills. With Marcia, we had drills for her times table. So Renuka would sit down and write over 100 tables-based questions in a day. In a week, Marcia was going through over 500 questions. In a month, over 2,000. Do you think her ability to calculate figures in her head improved? When you look at the cartooning course, the headlines course, the article writing course, they all have drills. If you've done the course, you know that the drills are anything but boring. They're hard work, but they're not boring. And yet, when you're called on to execute the exercises, you do so almost flawlessly. One of the biggest reasons why I see people struggling is because they don't have the ability to run at high speed. If you're going to run a business, no one needs to tell you about the importance of drills. The drills take a lot of effort, but they're only necessary for a short time. Marcia and I started learning a few countries one day in December, and by Easter, which was a few months later, she knew the countries and capitals in sequence. At Psychotactics, we've done well for a simple reason. We keep to the drills, then we add skills as we go along. And that's how you really become smarter. But smarts are just the icing on the cake. What drills really do is help you quickly go through your day. You learn the skill, you implement it. Talent is a reduction of errors. The fewer errors you make, the more talented you become. Instead of battling with headlines all day long, you get an outstanding headline done in a few minutes. On the other hand, someone might have been struggling to write an article for over 2 weeks and then has gone through that drill to the point where that person can write an engaging, complete article in under 2 hours. When we look at what we're good at, it's because we've learned a drill. To get things done, you can't believe in this super trick that a lot of people promise you on the internet. You have to run the same sequence over and over until it's something that you do not think about anymore. It's just something you can do with the minimum amount of energy. In 5000 BC, there is a Taking Action Forum. If you track the actions of those who report back every day, you'll notice a vast improvement over time. What they're doing is reducing errors. They're following the pattern of the brain. It's down to drills, engaging drills that help you to learn and execute faster than you've ever done before. Marcia knows about clouds, she knows about geology, science, and yes, countries. She may appear smarter than you, and in some ways, that may be true. But how did she do it? You know the answer. It's all about drills. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. So let's summarize what we've just learned. When I pick up Marcia from school, she always has this big grin on her face. And yes, she'll tease me by saying, J'ai beaucoup de dévots aujourd'hui. And I know that's my signal for chaos. But I also know that we can tame the chaos by using the 3 core elements. So the first thing is that we have to make some things non-negotiable. Recording this podcast for me is non-negotiable. Writing the newsletter, non-negotiable. Going to 5000 BC, non-negotiable. I have to do this like brushing teeth and showering, and it's non-negotiable. And once you start to make it negotiable, well, it doesn't work for you. The second thing is about saying no. A lot of people say yes to everything, and it doesn't seem obvious, but one of the things that you say yes to that sucks up a lot of your time is trying to find an easy path to success. And so you'll buy something that says, you're going to go from 0 to hero. You're going to get 10,000 clients in 3 months. And then 3 months later, you've wasted all that time when really you had to be plugging away bit by bit. And so saying no, getting rid of those things that waste your time and just really frustrate you, that's very critical. And the third thing is about drills. We really are talented beyond our own imagination. We've seen clients who've gone from cartooning to writing to headline writing to acquiring skills that you would not think possible. And yet they do it. And it's not that they just have an average ability. They have exceptional skills. And it's through drills. Drills make us amazingly fluent at what we need to do. And so these are the 3 things. But the thing that you can work on today is just getting rid of your distractions. So sit down and work out, what are my distractions? Unsubscribe from the newsletters that don't work for you. And that's when things start to get clearer. So what's happening in Psychotactics land? If you have been following closely on Facebook or even in 5000 BC, you would have known that the article writing course sold out in 14 hours. Now, a lot of people look at this and they go, wow, how do you manage this? Because we don't do any of the affiliates or ads or all the stuff that other people are doing online. And in a future episode, I want to talk to you about how we're doing at least some of the elements that cause clients to sign up so very quickly. In fact, Allison, who conducts the cartooning course, she says, I don't know how you run this juggernaut every year, how you manage to sign up all of these people so very quickly. And there is a science to it, like everything that we do at Psychotactics, and it always involves a certain amount of planning, system, and a lot of hard work and personalization. And that is the one thing that is probably missing with a lot of people. They think that everything is going to be this automated press button stuff, and it's not. The more automation we are faced with, the more we resent it. So at Psychotactics, what we do is we get very personal on so many levels that if you send us an email, you'll get responses over and over again until you stop the conversation. If you're in 5000 BC, you can ask dozens of questions, hundreds of questions, even if the question has been asked 100 times before, and you will get different answers. All of these things make a huge difference to how clients then perceive you. And all of this sounds like work, and it is work, but if you're going to do ads, you have to track the ads, you have to track staff who are running the ads. In the end, the work is exactly the same. It's not like you just press some button and it works. That is a myth, and if you don't believe it, well, it's true. It also depends on how you structure your information. So clients are not looking for information anymore. What they're looking for is to be able to get that skill, to get that ability. And when you look at all of the information products that we have, it's designed in a way that you consume it. You get to the end and then you're able to use it. It's not just a completion thing, it's a usage thing. And that's why people come back to buy more products, more courses, more workshops. That's one of the reasons why the sign up is so quick. And so we're going to have this on 28th of July. where you can get the home study of the Info Products course. And not everyone will get this notification. You have to go on the waiting list, and then Renuka will go through the waiting list, and then you'll get a notification saying you've been approved. And with everything we do, we create a level of scarcity, so there are only going to be 30 copies available. Even though this is a home study and it's digital, we restrict it to just a few numbers, and once it's done, it's done. So put that date in. The date is the 28th of July, but you have to be on the waiting list long before that, so that on the 28th of July, at the precise time, you can get within that 30 copy limit. And that's pretty much it. If you're in 5000 BC and a member, then there is a big advantage because you get the notification 24 hours earlier. So you get in a lot earlier, and 5000 BC is more than just getting to a product or a service quicker. It is this wonderful place where introverts meet and we talk and we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world and then really work on the strategy. There's lots of people that are taking action in the Taking Action Forum. So I would invite you to 5000 BC. Like with everything, you have to get on a list. So go to 5000 BC. There is a $10 fee. Pay that, and then 21 days later, you will be accepted into 5000 BC. So that's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. That was episode 199. The next one, that's 200.